When you begin to near the NBA postseason, obviously the main talk of the town will be the teams that will be participating in the playoffs and not the team that failed to make the cut. But I want to go over some of the things that these teams have learned over the course of the season that they'll be able to take into the offseason to build with and then to eventually translate into success. I'll start from the worst record and work my way up, and I'll be stopping before we get to the teams that made the play-in, with the Rockets being my only exception because they play like a team that could have made the play-in this season. Starting with the Detroit Pistons, I've learned virtually nothing from them this season, at least anything positive. They have yet to eclipse 25 wins in the past 5 seasons. The last time they made the playoffs was the 2019 season when they were the 8th seed, and the last time they were anything higher than the 8th seed was the 2008 season when they were the 2nd seed. They've been stuck as a below average franchise for over a decade at this point. What they need to do is actually build a somewhat competent team, and maybe that'll be through using your 50 to 60 million cap space in the summer to sign guys with experience winning, similar to what the Rockets did with Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks. And now look at them. They aren't making the playoffs, but you can see the cultural shift in the Rockets organization as they're approaching 40 wins for the first time since Harden left. Next, I have the Washington Wizards. They were long due for a rebuild, and we're finally seeing it now, so there's no need for Wizards fans to be worried about constantly trying to compete in mediocrity. Now, I won't say that I've watched too much of this team this season because they are the Wizards, but from what I've seen from Deni Avdija, he's looked like one of the more improved players this season, and he's looked more and more like a starting caliber player, along with Bilal Coulibaly, who's shown upside, especially on the defensive end. There's also Jordan Poole, who may have not been what they were hoping for offensively, but recently, when he's been allowed to be the main ball handler and freely control the offense, he's been a much more positive player and has been showing even more playmaking ability, which hopefully he'll be able to show coming into the next season. My third team is the San Antonio Spurs. What I have learned this season about them is that Victor Wembanyama, he's the real deal. He's evolved as a player multiple times this season. Usually you'll see a rookie start off rough and then make a jump at a certain point of the season, or you'll see them start off good but then plateau at a specific point of the season and maybe even go through a slump. That has not been the case for Wemby at all. Each month it feels like I'm seeing something newly improved or something that he's adding to his game. He's made major strides offensively, he's become a much better rebounder, a better passer, and is already one of the best defenders in the league. This just makes me wonder how they want to go about building around him. Do they want to start off slowly and build through the draft, or do they want to use their large supply of draft capital to trade for a star, particularly a point guard that can bring out Wemby's full potential and see his play at another level? I also learned that Devin Vassell has the potential to be a third option for the Spurs in the future, at least in my opinion. He's not an extremely ball-dominant player, and he's honestly a very portable player who's good off the ball, can shoot, and is a solid defender. If he can start attacking the rim more and draw more fouls, he can be one of the better scorers on the team. On to the Charlotte Hornets. This season I've learned that they have the ability and have made good moves towards making a play-in run next season. We've seen what LaMelo can do when he's healthy, which is really the main hope for the team. He only played 22 games this season and 36 last season, so there's a lot of concern there. But similar to Zion, who's also struggled with injuries and has now been healthy and is playing well, I do believe we'll be able to see a healthy LaMelo next season. And with him and Brandon Miller, who's proved that he was rightfully taken at number 2 in the draft, and Mark Williams, along with the good core pieces they've added in Trey Mann and Micic, you've got a core in shot-creating threats and playmakers, which gives me some confidence in them going into the future. They'll also be adding someone onto the team in the 2024 draft, so I'm looking forward to seeing their progression. For the Portland Trail Blazers, this season I learned that Delano Banton is a real rotational player due to his ability to provide reliable rim finishing, which is very important on teams, especially jump shot heavy teams that don't get to the rim very much. So the Blazers, who got him, was kind of a steal, considering they only traded 1 second-round pick for him. I've also learned that this just might be who DeAndre Ayton is at this point of time, and it's okay to accept that. But I still want to give him his flowers for how well he's been playing since the All-Star break. For me personally, the eye test doesn't do him justice because it feels like he still doesn't get to the rim as much as he should, and the defensive woes are still there, but he's rebounding well, and since the All-Star break he's been on fire, especially his mid-range game, which has led to him averaging 23 and 13 a game. And lastly, with Scoot Henderson, I've learned that he still needs a lot more time, which is fine. Especially for rookie guards coming into the league, it's very difficult for them to adjust to the different styles of play. What I do need to see more is him driving to the rim and also finishing better, because he just has not been a good finisher at all, which was kind of surprising. I didn't watch him in the G League, but I did expect from what I've heard that he'd be good at finishing at the rim. The playmaking is starting to come along, though he's turning over the ball a bit more than you'd like, but I do think that he's making strides towards becoming a good offensive player, which hopefully next season will be where we'll be able to see some more from him. Next, I have the Toronto Raptors. There's a few things that I've learned from them this season. First off, I've learned that Scottie Barnes is one of the best two-way players in the league. He operates well in the post when looking to score, can play make well, especially now that he's playing point guard a bit, and he provides a versatility on defense that you can confidently rely on when guarding both on and off the ball. I also learned that after the deadline, when they committed to a rebuild, that a change of scenery for RJ Barrett just seems to have been for the best. He's back home now, and he's looked good while getting first option reps. He was having one of the worst seasons of his career before he got traded, and that's not on the Knicks per se, but it's nice to see him thriving now in another role. Even for Emmanuel Quickley, who wasn't necessarily struggling for the Knicks, he's proving that he can be in a starting role instead of being a sixth man, and his ability to move without the ball and come off screens, along with his ability to shoot threes at nearly a 40% clip on 7 attempts, is what I believe will be extremely valuable for the Raptors going to next season. For the Memphis Grizzlies, this season I learned that Ja being out for the season, along with the large amount of injuries the team had this season, was a blessing in disguise. And yeah, I know that sounds really bad, but these injuries have given many players the opportunity to play, and this has resulted in them being able to find many guys who could potentially be a part of the rotation next year when they'll be looking to contend. For example, we have Gigi Jackson, who looked like one of the steals of the draft, who's benefited from getting a lot of minutes and has had some starting opportunities as well, and he's also had a lot of big games where he's shown out. There's also Vince Williams Jr., who was only getting 7 minutes a game last year, who now is up to 27 a game, and he's quickly established himself as a great defender and disruptor, along with a solid three-point shooter. Even Scottie Pippen Jr. has looked fairly impressive in his minutes at point guard, so the Grizzlies could be evaluating him as a possible backup for Ja next season. None of this would have been possible if they didn't have all of these minutes freed up this year, along with some of the cap flexibility that they have going into the offseason. They're a team that's going to be interesting to monitor going into 2025. On to the Utah Jazz. This season I learned that they're still gauging their options as they head towards a rebuild, because I think that they have a lot of guys on the roster that don't necessarily fit their timeline that they're currently on. I don't think there are really that many guys on the team that are safe from being traded, and this includes Lauri Markkanen. I did think that they would be looking to pair Lauri up with another star, and while that still is possible, I wonder whether they'll be willing to force it to happen when they just might not be ready to compete yet. If they do so, they have a lot of draft capital if they're looking to build through trade, rather than hoping that the player that they draft in the lottery can take them to another level. I think that it would probably be best for them to look to move either Colin Sexton or Jordan Clarkson, preferably Clarkson. Both of them are similar kinds of players that I don't think fit together very much. They're both the shot creator archetype on offense, but below average defenders. They can then incorporate Keontae George into their starting lineup and then develop him from there. And with my final team, the Brooklyn Nets, This season I've learned that they have no idea what they want to do. They have a super team of role players that can be key pieces on championship teams but have no choice but to play much major roles. The biggest example of that is Mikal Bridges, who we saw go on that incredible run when he was traded to the Nets last season, and he was averaging like 26 a game. This season he's not looked like the same exact player on the offensive side of the ball, and it doesn't help that his defense hasn't been what it was in the past, which going from not being one of the main options for a long time to having no choice but to create as the best player can be difficult for someone to keep up the same level of play on both sides of the ball. I also learned that Cam Thomas was stuck on the bench for far too long, especially after KD and Kyrie were traded, to the point where he was still struggling to start consistently up until Jack Vaughn was fired. He's shown that he can be a multiple level scorer, and the concern of his playmaking has been quieted a bit as he's become better at making reads. Of course, I'm not saying he's a good playmaker yet, but with more on-ball reps and him getting used to facing double teams, that experience will contribute to him being able to make a quick read to the open man when he gets blitzed. So, yeah, that's what I learned from the worst NBA teams this season. Some I learned more from, some I didn't learn much or really anything at all. If you have any thoughts on any of these teams, feel free to leave a comment down below, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.